Okay, for this video, so we will discuss about Module 7 entitled Consumption Functions, Saving Function, and the demand as well as the supply for money. Okay, for this video alone, so we will first discuss the consumption function, and the rest of the topics included in this module will also be discussed in the next or another video lectures. Okay, so here, basically, when we say consumption function, so this is normally related to or is also known as the Keynesian consumption function. So this is an economic formula that represents the functional relationship between the total consumption and the gross national income. Okay, so further, it was introduced uh, by the British economist John Maynard Keynes. So that's why in the first slide, if you could still remember, this term is also associated with the uh, author or this economist who introduced the concept. So he argued that the function could be used to track and predict the total aggregate consumption expenditure. So of course, since based on his logical and philosophical understanding about the, the concern or the topic, so this is how he understood the phenomena of the relationship between the consumption and the national income. Okay, so here, uh, the classic consumption function suggests that the consumer spending is wholly determined by the income and the changes also in their income. So basically, if we will look into the situation, it is but normal that we can say that the spending of an individual will eventually be based on the level of income that they are uh, gaining. Okay, or in some other cases, there are also spending or consumer spending, which is beyond their level of income. Okay, so if that uh, argument is true, okay, in which uh, the consumer spending is wholly determined by the income and the changes in their income, then the aggregate savings should also increase proportionally as the gross domestic product or GDP. Okay, so this is how Keynes relate the spending or the consumption function with that of the national income. So the idea is to create a mathematical relationship, okay, between the disposable income and consumer spending, but only on the aggregate levels. Okay, so basically here, we will look into the national level. Okay, although these are as well composed of the individual consumer spending and disposable incomes. Okay, so we are looking into the macro level. So the stability of the consumption function based on Keynes' psychological law. So when contrasted with the volatility of investment is a cornerstone, okay, of his macroeconomic theory. Okay, so this is how he defined the concept and formulate the idea of this consumption function. So most of the post-Keynesians, they admit that the consumption function is not stable in the long run. So since consumption pattern eventually will change, of course, as or depending upon the change in their income, whether it will change or it will increase, or decrease. Okay, so based on his work, so this is what he have formulated for the consumption function. So this is okay. So we have here the formula. So C here is equal to A plus MD. So these variables have their own meaning, okay, or factors. Okay, so C, or the variable C in that function or formula, this is our consumer spending. Okay, so what do we mean by uh, consumer spending? Okay, consumer spending is basically the spending of the income of an individual. Okay, so whatever that he purchased, may it be goods or services, okay, and pays for it, that is what we call as the consumer spending. So the A variable stands for autonomous consumption. So what do we mean by autonomous consumption? So autonomous consumption basically is the expenditures that consumers must make even when they have no disposable income. So here, meaning to say, if the individual has no income, there are we cannot do away from important spending like um, purchase of the uh, basic needs like food. Okay, that is the most common spending. Okay, even if you have no income, you have no choice but to look for something that can be exchanged or to spend or to purchase for it, or else your health, even your life will be at risk. Okay, so certain goods basically are needed to be purchased regardless of how much income or money a consumer has in their possession at any given time. Okay, so this is what we call autonomous consumption. So we do not actually refer or base the spending on the level of income, because these goods are very important, basic, and necessary. Okay, what about variable M? So M here stands for marginal propensity to consume. So in economics, marginal propensity to consume, or MPC, is the proportion of the aggregate raise in pay that a consumer spends on the consumption of goods and services as opposed to saving it. So here, if in the case of a raise in the pay of an individual, so instead of raising also his savings, he increases his uh, spending on consumption of goods and services. So that is the marginal propensity to consume. Because of the increase in their pay, so they also increase their spending. Okay, and the last variable is D, okay, which stands for the real disposable income. So when we say real disposable income, it is also known as disposable income. This is the amount of money that an individual or household has to spend or save after the income taxes have been deducted, or after all of the necessary deductions or required deductions have been um, taken from their pay. So, meaning to say, real disposable income is what the individual actually take home as his pay for any sources, may it be from unemployment, business, or other sources of income. Okay, so this is real disposable income. So those are the different factors or variables, okay, for the consumption function, okay, of Keynes. So much of the Keynesian doctrine centers around the frequency with which a given population spends or saves their new income. So depending on the behavior of the individual on how they spend their extra money, their raise in pay. Okay, so here, um, the multiplier, the consumption function, and the marginal propensity to consume are each crucial for Keynes' focus on spending and aggregate demand. So this is also his assumptions, okay, and in creating the consumption function or formula. So here, uh, the consumption function is also assumed to be stable and static, meaning all expenditures are passively determined by the level of national income or the income of the individual. Okay, so the same is not true also of savings, which Keynes called as investment. Okay, because in here, um, we should not, or according to him, we should not be confused with the government spending. Okay, another concept which Keynes often defined as an investment. So this is his theory. Okay, although there are some or other economists who are against, okay, or who opposed, okay, this theory, but for him, this is how he understood and defined these terms. Okay, so for the model to be valid, the consumption function and independent investment must remain constant, okay, in the long run for national income to reach the equilibrium. So what do we mean by equilibrium? So here at equilibrium, it is assumed that the business expectations and consumer expectations normally match up. So one of the potential problem, however, is that the consumption function cannot handle the changes in the distribution of income and wealth because, again, based on Keynes, it is uh, static, okay, and stable. So when this change, so too might the autonomous consumption and the marginal propensity to consume. Of course, because um, these factors somehow depends on the level of income, okay, and the level of income as well as the spending, okay, of the individual. Okay, so that's all for our consumption function.